First up, discussing the impact of the CMO on long-term business success. Well, 2020 has pushed us to be our bravest selves, of course. We've had to adapt, we've had to pivot, and marketing is really a necessity for business success in 2021. So how do we ensure that everyone else recognizes the value of what you and we all do and the importance of marketing? So please welcome back to the stage Aimee Nicklin, who is going to host the session, and it's going to be fantastic. So please welcome back Aimee. Over to you.
Hello, I hope you guys had a good lunch. Really excited to be back up here with you. I am going to introduce just now Peter DeBenedictis and Rami Zagran back up here. We're going to have a seat. We're going to have a discussion all around challenges and braveness, and how the impact of the CMO, well, what is the impact of the CMO on our long-term business? How can we improve that? How do we extend it? And I mentioned earlier when I was talking about how we get that really into that C-suite strategic position to really impact growth. So I think you know both of them, so they probably don't need much of an introduction. But Peter DeBenedictis, who is the CMO for Middle East and Africa for Microsoft, and Rami Zagran, who's the Group CMCO for Saudi German Hospitals. Gentlemen, please come join me on the stage. No, because then I have to keep, I did that yesterday, and then I was looking around the whole time. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. How are you both?
Great.
How's your week been? Let's start there. It's been good, hasn't it?
Intense. Great in a good way. I said to somebody earlier, you don't realize how much you crave human interaction until it starts from you, and then you get it back, and it's like, wow. And you can understand how people in Western Europe and the US don't want to go back into lockdown, because once you've experienced and being out again and meeting people and seeing people, it's really incredible. And I would hate to go backwards here, and I don't think we will in Dubai. The government's doing a great job, but it's been a great week for me.
Good, Rami. Good week?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just seeing, like you said, people, an event, people who are sort of presenting their work, their company, just brought back so many good vibes that we were missing for all these months. So it's nice to be back. It's been a good week.
Fantastic. So let's talk about being a CMO in all of its visors. And one of my takeaways from this week is how utterly complicated your jobs are, how multifaceted they are, and how much is going on. So one of the big themes that has come out is this role of CMO in the C-suite. There was, as I mentioned earlier, some data from Deloitte 2019 that showed that many CMOs still struggling to find their place at the table, to get that relationship with the CEO and to really have a voice. Peter, why? Why is this still a problem? And how do we start to improve that?
So this is not the first time this topic has come up over the last few years. Unlike any other function in a large organization, the role of a CMO or the marketing lead, VP of marketing, whatever you will say, is largely dependent on the interpretation of that role by the CEO. HR does HR, it's very clear. CFO does CFO, finance, very clear. Sales guys, hit your number, very clear. Whereas marketing is, first of all, it's a very vast function. You have data, analytics, research, PR, communications, advertising, customer insight, product marketing, it's very wide. And depending on the CEO, he will interpret what he needs from that job very differently from the next guy and the next guy. And the priorities of a business will always change. And so often what happens, and I think Mark touched on this in the morning, as the business priorities change, it's very hard for the CEO to say, well, I need more product marketing, less advertising, less branding. You're a product marketing guy, I need a switch. Versus having a growth mindset, which was talked about quite a bit. No, actually, this guy can change and morph and grow, and let's give him a chance to move. And so I think that is a big part of it. The second is very nebulous KPIs for a marketer. Again, it's slightly due to an interpretation, but also most people in the C-suite, my peers, for example, and the leadership team, have no clue what I do. They have no clue what you do, and if you're good at telling a story, you can sell, sand to the Arabs, as they say, in the C-suite, because they don't understand. And because they don't understand, they often will form opinions based on belief, versus facts and figures, because they really don't know what you do. The most successful partnerships that I've seen between a CMO and a CEO that I've experienced personally and I've observed others is where the CEO understands marketing. And it makes all of the difference, because then that relationship is tight. He understands how you're delivering value to him or her. Often her is better, to be honest. And you're able then to build long-term sustainable value, and it takes 2 or 3 years to really get into a CMO role, to build the right team and deliver long-term value. It's not a role like a salesperson. Come in, hit the number in the first quarter. It takes longer in marketing to build that traction, and a lot of CEOs, particularly in publicly trading companies, they don't have that time. You got to hit now, so that's another factor as well. That's my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with those 2 points. Definitely, we face an issue where marketing is seen so broadly that sort of understanding what marketing does sometimes is a challenge for anyone outside of the department, even some people within the department, to know, well, this is my scope or it's not, and as well the role of the CEO. But in addition to that, I find a number of different challenges, which is sometimes as a marketing department, you're seen as a cost center. So, there's every sort of member of the C-suite has a different objective. The CEO is to maximize profitability. The CFO is to ensure that costs are within a certain limitation to be able to, again, maximize profitability. And when you're presenting ideas and plans that are not immediately generating that kind of revenue, you're seen as a cost center, and the immediate benefit isn't always seen. So that is an issue that you face in the boardroom, which is, why should I give you that budget when I can spend it on something I know can directly impact the bottom line right away, ignoring the long-term impact of brand building, which is absolutely critical for any brand and any CEO who understands. So I think that plays a very big role in the boardroom, as well as the fact that marketing can be quite subjective, right? So and we're very public. We're the most public-facing element of any organization. We're subjective, plus we're we're public-facing. So anytime we have campaigns, we have any form of communication, anything that goes out, the entire company can see it, and the entire company has an opinion on it, and not always agreeing to the thought process.
And no other function has that.
No other
function.
Sometimes I tell myself, I'd love to be an accountant. This side needs to match that side, and every year it's the same. It doesn't change. Whereas with marketing, also we face the marketing is ever changing, right? So to try and even yet alone introduce an idea that's 10 years old, yet introduce something that was just new 6 months ago to get acceptance. So we face a lot of challenges in the boardroom, no doubt. And this is just scratching the surface.
I don't believe you. I don't think you want to be an accountant at all. Who would want to leave marketing? But tell me, Rami, has it got worse this year? I think everyone's asking this, right? Budgets are cut, COVID is COVID. Has it got worse? Has it changed?
So it got worse, but also for better. So what I mean with that is there was cost cutting, no doubt. You have to survive. But I think there was an understanding of the importance of marketing this year, because it showed that whether you're a brand, well, we're in healthcare, right? And so we were needed. At this time, we didn't shut down at any point, but people were afraid to come to us, right? Because we're talking March, April, people wanted to stay home, even if they had the ability to move around. They delayed elective surgeries, seeing their physician for their chronic cases. So there was a lot of fear. But we still, by being ever present in the minds of people and reassuring them, and I think the brands that really were sort of showed their value were the ones that reacted the quickest to the needs of the new situation. So brands that reassured customers or patients in our case that we're a safe place, that nothing has changed, that we're taking more precautions and more measures, immediately made people feel, I'm going to go back. At the same time, I think when the board started seeing that we haven't been impacted as much as we thought, and we've allowed or we've enabled marketing to continue with their activities, and there's still some form of return from it, these guys are the ones who are actually saving us right now. So we had it was actually a moment to shine. And these are the moments you want to shine in the difficult times.
Yeah, that's what my old boss used to say, when times are good, the salespeople are the heroes. When things are bad, that's when marketing earns its money. I would, a few things I'd build on that, on what it's been like. First of all, I promised a local publisher that I was on stage today, and I would remind all the marketers in the room to not forget the local publishing organizations and entities that are here, because they are suffering, and we need them. We need that local voice. With respect to the big digital publishers, they will survive without your $10,000, $20,000 campaign. However, a local publisher, that can be the difference between staying open and closing their doors. So I would encourage all of you who have an influence on media planning, don't forget the local publishers, because we need them, and they have been hit very hard. And you've had winners and losers from the pandemic. Definitely the local publishing industry has suffered. We know the food and beverage, retail, hospitality has been tough, but like your industry, healthcare, mine and technology, it's been a pretty strong year for us. Everybody has realized that they need technology in order to function, to respond, recover, and then reimagine their business. Technology is an incredibly important element, and we've been very blessed to be in the middle of that, and that we've been able to enable our customers to navigate, and marketing played a big role in that. For example, we turned 1 million students on in the UAE in 3 weeks in March with the partnership with the Ministry of Education, and getting that message out, training. So marketing is not just selling product, educating our customers, educating the parents, the students, the teachers how to use the technology. Massive effort that we had not planned for. And what an opportunity as a marketer to be able to have that kind of impact on the economy, on the education system. We turned several public companies who resisted technology for a long time. Remote working was not done. We turned 60,000 people on in a week onto Teams. We've seen, last month we published 2.7 billion meeting minutes in a single day on Teams around the world. So massive transformation. Marketing played a very big role in that. So it's been a great opportunity. One thing that I would say has been a challenge, particularly for B2B marketers, and this is what I would, a message to the folks out in the audience, our global VP of events really says it very well. Your field marketing teams have typically been event producers. You now need to think about becoming television producers and entertainers, because you're competing not just against your competitors for eyeballs, you're competing against Netflix, the 15 or 20 Teams or Zoom calls, WebEx calls that are out there. Everybody with a webcam and a dream can put on a webinar. You're competing for eyeballs just like the entertainment industry. So your marketers need to upskill and reskill very fast to becoming digital content producers. And effectively you're entertaining an audience. And that is a big shift from doing an event and building a booth and having a stand, putting on something like this today, to doing everything digitally, entertaining people. So the upskilling required, I would say it's not going to go away. I think digital first, digital engagement first, will be the norm, at least for the next year, 18 months. And you've got to get good at it. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So I would encourage everyone in the audience, don't think that it's great that GITEX is on. I've loved this week. But there's only one GITEX a year, and you will not be able to do this in your business, in your industry, more than once a year. What are you going to do for the other 51 weeks of the year? You need to learn digital engagement at scale really fast to be successful as a marketer.
I mean, absolutely, digital engagement, changing the world, but I think also customer experience, right? I mean, Rami, I know this is something you're really passionate about, and customer experience still is a little bit floating. Who owns it? You know, does marketing own it? Does ops own it? Does sales own it? I know you've got really passionate ideas about this. What do you think? Where does it sit?
Yeah, so I'm quite passionate about more than customer experience. I'm quite passionate about the idea that marketing isn't just, what tends to happen is a lot of people think, or even people in marketing tend to think that marketing is just, you know, there is the 4 Ps, the 7 Ps, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of people, if we're just talking marketing or sort of school book terms, focus on one of the Ps that marketing is, which is promotion. Mm-hmm. This happens in this region for some reason quite a lot, which is advertising. So promotion being advertising. Yeah. So they focus on what are we going to do, what's our next campaign, how we're going to advertise. They don't focus on everything else. And I believe there's a lot more than 7 Ps to marketing. You know, it's not just about following that textbook and doing, you know, the 7 Ps. We definitely have a responsibility for the product itself. We definitely have a responsibility for the price. Marketing is a lot more than just the advertising. But one that I'm extremely passionate about, as you said, is customer experience. And it is, as you said, it's not really owned in a lot of organizations by anyone. We used to think of customer experience as the frontliners who have to offer a very courteous, very polite way of, whether it's F&B, the waiters, or at a retail shop, the actual salespeople. We used to think that's what customer experience was. Then we started thinking about it, well, it's also about social media and how we respond to people and having a great engagement. But it's not that. Customer experience is offering a whole end-to-end enhanced experience. And as a marketing department, as a communications department, whatever you want to call it, we should have an area of responsibility, whether you own the entire piece or whether you have a part of it like we do. So we have a whole patient experience piece, but we own a part of the experience piece to offer our patients, our customers, which are patients, experiences that go beyond the physical experience of the hospital. So whether it's creating that experience through an app, through video consultations, through the websites, through even physically, when you do come to the hospital, the experience of how things look and feel and how you interact and engage with a brand, or as Peter said, content, which we've become, this is a new skill set, content, which again, as I was saying 10 years ago, this didn't really exist. Creating content that creates an experience for people to take, to capture their imagination, to get them involved and engage with your brand. All this is experience, right? Without a purchase, without an interaction. This is just them experiencing you as a brand. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. We're not just here to create an ad.
Well, there we go, quote of the day. And Peter, what does that mean in tech? I had an occasion this lockdown where, on another platform, definitely not yours, which is, you know, my entire engagement is technological, it's always on my laptop. But when I needed a person to help me with something, they couldn't, so I unsubscribed, and that was the end of that. So, you know, when people think about Microsoft, they think purely tech, digital world, but how does humanity, how does customer experience blur? What's the role?
So I'll tell you an interesting story, and it's around diversity and inclusion in customer experience. So several years ago, we launched Windows 10 as our new backbone of our platform, and we did some testing. I mean, we're blessed that we've got a very large penetration of the PC market around the world, but we did a test on how people were feeling, and we found that men loved it, installing the whole out-of-box experience. It's digital, but loved it. Women were not enjoying the experience. And we're like, what? It's the same product, it's the same steps. What is the problem? And we dug a little bit further, and what we found out is that the engineering team, which was responsible for developing the install process, was 100% male.
That's surprising.
And so they designed the system with a unconscious bias towards men, because they're men. You can't blame them. They went in a certain way, and women feel differently. They go about things in a different way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as an organization, you need to look out for that unconscious bias in the experience of how people experience your products, how they buy them, how they purchase them, how they use them, how you respond to support when things go wrong. People are different, whether nationality, gender, you name it. And so that was a really hard lesson that we learned. And I always like to share that because A, it's kind of interesting, but B, it's a reminder that you have to respect all types of people who are going to use your product. And it's a huge part of what we do now at Microsoft. Some of you may have seen a couple of years ago our Super Bowl ad with the adaptive controller for people with determination. That started as a project, volunteers who happened to have a child who was not able to experience gaming. And we have a 2-week period every summer where we have hackathons where engineers and marketing people can get together, and they built this adaptive controller on their own. So a couple of interesting pieces around this. One, we sold a ton of them, right? It was commercially a success. Two, we engaged with the entire audience, not just people with determination, our entire audience really responded to this product. Said, wow, isn't this great that Microsoft is doing? By the way, we made money out of it by being more inclusive. And the third thing around customer experience, so the engineers built this really cool controller, plug in the Xbox, great. But what they realized after the first product shipped is that it was really not very easy to unbox. So they redesigned the entire unboxing experience, which we now use in our mainstream products, that with just one finger, you can unbox, open the box, take out the controller, plug it in with one finger. So again, around customer experience, remember your entire audience, not just the people who look like you, the people who think like you, having casting a wide net when you think about the entire customer journey, super important. We've learned that lesson the hard way, but we're continuing to adapt.
I love that story about the box. I just love that. It reminds me a little bit when you're talking about these tiny things that can make such a big difference. 2 days ago, we had Dr. Chris Abrams talking about neuroscience, and he put a picture of 2 pieces of cake on the screen, which were identical. The only difference was one had the fork on the left of the cake and one had the fork on the right of the cake. And he said even that, from a photography point of view, I think it was about 80% differentiation in effectiveness, because most people are right-handed. And just by having the fork on the right side of the plate, it made a huge difference to the experience of that piece of communication. So these things can be tiny, right? I'm conscious of time. I wouldn't be able to finish this panel without talking about braveness. And I think lots of these things you've touched on are brave. You know, how do you integrate marketing far beyond your Ps into the C-suite? How do you totally reinvent packaging for an all-inclusive audience? But Peter, if you had to talk about just one occasion, this year, last year, any year, when you really felt you've been brave and it's paid off or not, what would that story be?
So all of us have experienced lockdown in some form and working from home, and probably a lot of challenges of having children behind you in the middle of a call, trying to educate your kids while doing a job, so much uncertainty. So I had a team member who was really struggling. And unfortunately, our targets don't change. There's still an expectation we deliver. And so I just came to the conclusion, I just said, just take off. Well, no, I have my job. I'm really passionate about my career. And I said, yeah, but I'm really passionate about your mental health. I'm really passionate about you being a whole person. And so I said, take off. How much time do you need? Okay, take 30% more than that and just do it. And don't tell anybody. Don't put it in a system. Don't go ask for permission. Just take off. And I don't want to see you online. I don't want to see you answering emails. And some managers may think, well, no, I have to go through the system. I have to ask HR. I would encourage everybody to be brave with your leadership, with your team. They're humans. They have a whole life outside of that screen that you've been connecting with them over the last 10 months. And it was hard. Work suffered. I got some hassle about things being late and not delivered on time. But I know when I met that person for the first time after many months and they gave me a big hug, I knew what that was for, because they appreciated, wow, the company stood behind me, you stood behind me. And I just would say that it wasn't brave for me. To me, it's just a natural thing, but I know others would consider that to be something, wow, that's amazing. For me, it's just being empathetic, understanding the situation that people are going through, and kind of, we're going to do our job in the company, we're going to deliver impact, but we need to deliver impact for our people first.
Wonderful. Rami, one big brave thing you've done that's made a difference?
One brave thing. I'd say being in public without my mask on right now. There is something that's still not public, but we're undergoing a huge transformation as an organization. We've been undergoing this transformation for 2 years. I joined about 2 years ago. We've already been taking brave steps to do things very differently than before. You may not see it a lot because, so I represent the Saudi German hospital, but in Saudi and Cairo. So a lot of the work and the content and the things that you see, you'll see it more in Saudi than you see it here. So that huge change is happening quite a bit in Saudi. But what you will see, hopefully very visible starting early next year, is the culmination of that transformation. And it's a whole different brand that you're going to see next year. And that took a lot of bravery to sort of change the current status and how people perceive branding. At some point we had to change the name of the department just so people could understand what this is really about. So you're going to see some things that are completely different from a healthcare perspective, very different from a Saudi German perspective, and that took many steps to get to, and that just takes a lot of conviction and believing that what you're doing is different, it's unique, it's the right thing, making sure that you are passionate about it, and this isn't just a job, this is something you actually want to transform and do, particularly in that, and we spoke about this, empathy, that communicating with empathy is absolutely crucial for anyone, yet alone healthcare, and that we want to change our complete tone of voice, how we express ourselves, how we physically look and feel in all aspects, digitally and physically. That is something we've been working on. It's going to take, and it took a lot of bravery, and it's going to continue taking a lot of bravery because once it's out there, we're going to be exposed to a lot of criticism, a lot of feedback, but again, having conviction, believing that this is the right approach, is what hopefully will get us through it. And you know, I'm definitely willing to go through this journey and be brave about it.
Fantastic. So braveness, but also resilience is what I'm hearing there as well. You know, just that effort to keep going, to keep pushing. And you know, you mentioned you might get some criticism on it. Yesterday, or may have been the day before, but we were speaking to the CMO of Coca-Cola, who was also saying that as marketers, we should never be afraid of the negative feedback. He said, actually, what you should be afraid of is no feedback. And, you know, if you get negative comments or negative shares, actually, that's just as valuable as the positive ones. We've got just about 2 minutes. Are there any questions for the gentleman from the audience? Oh, you quiet lot. After lunch, I know that's the problem. The other thing that it really reminds me of listening to you two, we again spoke about it a little bit yesterday, is last week, Fernando Machado, who's the CMO of Burger King, who is arguably one of the bravest marketers out there, right? He wrote something recently and he said, as far as he's concerned, he would rather go down in flames, his words, not mine, than just stick for mediocre. And his advice to marketers was to fight, right? Just to fight for what you believe. If it's worth doing, Rami, like your big transformation, you know, just keep fighting. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and for everyone being here today. I think we've covered off some fantastic topics here: braveness, resilience, how to integrate customer experience, how to pull your C-suite on board, and how to just do all of that with empathy, with humanity, to keep going. So thank you very much for being here with us. A round of applause for the gentlemen, please.